This upgraded stock analyzing AI agent not only takes in information from charts like we can see on the screen here, but is also able to analyze Google News to identify sentiment around a specific stock and see if that's going to impact the price in the future. In this video, I'll show you exactly how to create the AI agent that analyzes the stock chart, as well as the ability to scrape Google News' data for the headlines and how that will impact the result. And we'll do this all inside n8n and low code. But first, let's jump into a quick demo to see exactly how it works. Please write me a performance around Apple. We'll be able to say test workflow. It should come through and trigger this detailed stock analysis. We should then be able to come across to our agent. We'll need to look at these executions. So if we just refresh this, what we should see is it running. So we'll just wait for it to come back up to the top because we just saw it appear. There we go. So it's running for 18 seconds again. This will take a little while to go through because of the amount of data we're analyzing and scraping from Google News, as well as going through and using our AI agent to really analyze it to get that result. So I'll just wait for this to come back. So there we go. It looks like it succeeded. So if we come back across, we got a green tick here and we've got all of that information coming back on the left-hand side here, all around how that stock performs. Now we're going to be building on top of our simple stock analyzing agent that we've built previously. So make sure to check that video out. I'll link it in the resources and in the link below. As we can see here, walk you through how to build out the base with the Telegram chat trigger and the AI agent. The key part is we're going to go through and add this new workflow around being able to get detailed insights into the stocks. And to do that, so we're going to come across, we're going to do call another workflow. We're going to paste our prompt in here. And this is basically saying that we're going to conduct a really detailed research into this specific workflow. Again, what you'll need to do is make sure you have a new workflow set up. We'll come back across, we'll do YT demo, and we're going to do detailed analysis so that we can go through and use that. We'll come back into here. We'll do workflow, when executed by another workflow, and then we're going to paste in here all of the information so that we can go through and use that. So now if we come back across, what we should see is refresh, and now we can add the stock ticket as defined by AI, get rid of this, change to expression, and then we're going to put across our chat ID from our Telegram message so that we can send all of the information back there. We'll call this our detailed analysis of stock. We'll be able to save that. Now we're going to do save. Now we'll go through and build it out. And this is going to be a bit more complex compared to the other one, because again, as you can see here, we're going to be getting off lots of new stories so that we can use them. So first things first, we're going to come across, we're going to do HTTP. This is enabling us to go and get all of the information from Yahoo Finance. So we're going to change this to expression, paste in here, and we'll be able to come through and use this. So we'll just rename this to get Yahoo Finance and then save. We'll be able to scroll in a bit so we can see exactly what's going on. We're going to set some data in here. So what we'll do is copy this, paste in here, and then we'll come back across to our AI agent that we had a bit earlier. And we're just going to copy, if we come across to schema, where we've got our chat ID so that we've got it all embedded just in this workflow for us to go through and do some testing. So now we can do save. And as we can see here, it's gone purple. So we can pull across where we've got our information, which in this case, we need that stock ticker, which is exactly the same as that Apple as we had a bit earlier. So now if we give this a test step, what we can see on the right-hand side here is lots and lots and lots of data that's coming back, which we'll be able to use. So we'll rename this to Yahoo Finance data. So we'll be able to save. We're going to do HTTP request. We're then going to be able to get our chart again. So we'll come back across to where we had our chart a bit earlier. We'll copy this request, come back across, we'll paste in there. Now we're just going to need to change the request that we sent off. So we're going to need to get rid of here after where we had the equals, and we'll add in our stock ticker there. So now if we do test, we should be able to get this chart back. So there we go, all good to go. So now we can rename this to get chart. We'll be able to add this up here. We'll be able to do OpenAI. We'll open this up. Again, we're going to analyze an image. We're then going to be able to use our files. So again, this is going to be GPT-4 mini if we wanted to in this use case. But again, play around with it and just find which one works best for you. Again, we're going to be using a binary file. We're going to need our text input. So we'll come back across and then we're just going to copy where we've got it in here ready to go. So we'll come back in, paste in there. And again, that's going to be our analyzed chart all ready to go. So now if we do test step, what we should get back is that analysis that we had a bit earlier. Again, exactly the same process, just so that we can use it for that detailed research we're going to be using a bit later on. So there we go, all good to go, and we've got that output. Now what we need to do is go through and analyze the news. And the reason we're doing this, because it will give us much more insight into maybe why that stock's overperforming, underperforming, buy, hold, sell, whatever it may be. Again, with Apple, for example, they're moving a lot of their manufacturing to India. So again, that can influence the stock price. We want to come across to Bright Data, which are really good at being able to scrape lots of this information for us. Again, it's incredibly cheap to run as well. We'll be able to come into our account. Then what we're going to look for on the left-hand side here is we're going to come across to this spider-looking one here, which is web scrapers. We're looking for web scrapers library. We're going to come down and we're looking for where we've got news. There we go, news. And then we're doing news Google. We're going to say news collect by URL. We're going to do scraper API because we want to use it through an API request. And then we can ignore the rest of this because we want to have this screen here. So as we can see, we can now change the different countries we want to analyze. So again, if you're doing some of the global companies, maybe you want to include different countries, see if they're reporting on different news. Or if you're doing something like Apple, maybe you only need the US, the UK, and somewhere in the EU to be able to get that input. So for example, here we could do Apple, copy, and then just paste in the rest of them here. It's also going to build out our API token request for us automatically, so we can go through and use this. So again, all we would need to do is copy. Again, if you're using that on-demand, maybe daily schedule reporting, what I recommend you do is if you come back across, you want to send on this webhook, and then you want to send all of the data back to that webhook once it's completed. And this will be able to automatically update maybe a Slack channel, Telegram, so that you get the latest and greatest. All we've done is copy this request here. We'll come back across. We're going to pull out here. We're going to do HTTP request. We're going to come up to where we got import curl. We're going to import in there. We're going to change this to be get news insights. We'll be able to rename that. Now we'll keep all of the rest of the same here. We don't need to change anything like this. What we do need to change though is come down to here and it's all the keywords. So for example here, what we can see is we got this data back from Yahoo Finance. And down here, we've got the long name. So again, maybe that company name, that makes it really specific for that request we want to put through. So now if we open this up, we'll just make this a bit bigger. What we can do is come down to that Apple name and we'll be able to pull that across so that we can go through and use that. Again, we're searching the country here. So this is US, France, GB. So again, you can change that to be dynamic to the different regions you want. We're also going to say that we want all of this to come back in English because that's what I speak and we'll be able to see it much easier for the research we're going to be doing. We'll pull this across just for the other ones. So again, for these larger companies, we'll be able to see what's going on across different geographies. And maybe this is why the stock's increasing, decreasing, whatever it may be. So now we've got the ability to search all of the news. What we'll be able to do is come onto the top and do test step. We can see that we've got this snapshot request coming through. Now we're going to build out the rest a little bit now because it's going to take a couple of minutes to go off and scrape all the data. So we'll come through, we'll do HTTP request. We're then going to come across to the documentation here for downloading a snapshot. I'll include it in the links below. We want to come down and do try it. We'll automatically have our API key added in here. If not, make sure to go through and add it. We need to add our path in here. So snapshot ID is just a holder for now. And the reason we want to have that is so we can copy our curl request. We also want to make sure that the format is JSON so that we can go through and use it nice and easy in our request. We'll copy this. We're going to come back across to our agent. We're going to do import curl. We're going to paste in there and it's automatically going to update the data. What we need to do though is actually change this end part here to be our specific snapshot ID. So we'll do expression, pop this out. We're going to get rid of this. We're going to pull this across and now we'll be able to get this data. So at the moment it's likely running. So it looks like our credentials aren't correct. So I'll just come across. We'll just copy this bearer key that we had for the other one. And then we'll paste it in here. So it should be all good to go. So now we can see it actually going off and trying to get that data. We can see the status is running. So this means it's still going through and getting the data. So we're going to need to have a wait module here just to go and actually analyze that request, see if we've got the results yet. So we can say get snapshot data. We'll be able to do rename. Now, as mentioned, this can take a little while to run. So if I come across, for example, here, you'll be able to see all of the elements here. So 3 minutes, 4 minutes to be able to go through and scrape this data and be able to provide those responses back. One thing that's really good though is down here we can see the price starts at $0.0015 per record that we're trying to scrape back. So again, what you'll be able to do is if you come across to the request builder, what we'll also be able to see here is you can limit the article search by results. So maybe you only want 10 or so results to come back. per input. So again, that would be 10 for the US, 10 for France, 10 for the GB. You'd be able to get that back as well. So we've got 3 different inputs here. We would be able to say, for example, we want 5 per input. So for example, 5, 10, 15, it would produce 15 results back. So again, we can be incredibly cost efficient when it comes back to scraping all of these news results and be able to do lots of detailed analysis. And again, if you're putting lots of money into it, being able to scrape lots of up-to-date data, different regions, big companies, is going to be really useful. If we come back to our logs, we can see that it's still running. So what we're going to need to do is come back to our agent. We're going to come into here and we're going to do an if statement. This is going to help us see, okay, if that status is still running, we need to go through and wait for it to come back. We're going to change this to string is not equal to running. So we're basically, is it completed? And the reason we're going to do this is just because it makes the formatting a bit easier. We'll be able to put wait in here. We'll then say 5 seconds, 10, 15, whatever it may be to get that result back. And we'll be able to do set module in here. And what this will enable us to do is just loop through and make sure that we're able to add our token back in. So what I'll be able to do is add field in here. I'll just for time, make sure that we come into here, do expression, change this to fixed. We'll change this one to expression. And then we're just going to do get news insights. And then we'll be able to get rid of the rest of this. And basically what it's going to do is go through and test to see if that result is complete. We'll be able to say this is going to be our snapshot ID. So now what it will be able to do is we'll be able to test the results. So for example, here, if I do test step, it should see that that is not ready to go yet. So we'll be able to loop this background. And now what it will do is every time it will be able to loop through until we get those results back. And we'll be able to actually make sure that we get the results before we go through and do the rest of the process. So we'll come back across to Bright Data. It looks like it's literally just finished. So this took, for example, 3 minutes to be able to get all of those results. We'll come back across. What we should see now is this is actually completed. So we've got 300 different items that relate back to Apple News. So again, this is where we're able to scrape lots of data, do the analysis on it, and we're able to say that the completed is true. So we'll be able to go off and use this data. We'll just move these so they're out of the way slightly so that we can go through and do our processing and it looks nice and neat. So the next part we're going to do is come across and we'll do code, because what we want to do is be able to aggregate this information together, because then what we want to do is go through and basically find, okay, who was the publisher, what was the date, and how old is this information to know if it's relevant or maybe not relevant. What we'll be able to do is come through, we'll do filter remove conditions. We're going to pull across our date in there. And we're going to change this to date time is after, and then we'll paste this as an expression. And what we basically said in here is that we're going to take the current date time minus 1 month to understand if it was after this current date time. So what we'll be able to do is filter. And now what we're going to say is we need the news to be after a certain time. So we've got rid of 35, which are older than that. So now what we'll be able to say is, okay, we've now got 265 recent news articles all about Apple and their news. But what we want to do with this is actually make it a bit more usable. So we'll come across and do code, because what we want to do is actually analyze all of these different publishers to see if maybe there's certain news articles that come out quite frequently, if more are positive or negative, and we'll be able to go through and aggregate them together. So we can see that we've got 52 different publishers that were reporting about Apple over the last month or so. But the issue with the way that it's currently set up is if we come back in here, we'll see that what we've been doing is actually getting all of this information together. So it's aggregated by The Verge. But if we want to go through and do some sentiment analysis on each of the story, we would need to split each of these back out. So for example, we would need to do split. We would then need to put across, for example, articles. So then we'd be able to go through and analyze each one. So we get back to that 265 item. So what we're going to do today, just to keep it a bit more concise, is we're going to get rid of this code and this code module here. But again, if you wanted to go through and use that, you could. What we're going to do is come back in here. We're going to change this to be day. So then we're going to only look for one previous day. So we're going to be able to bring this number down by quite a bit. So there we go. We've only got 87 we're going to keep. And perhaps what we'll say is the country. We'll say, in this case, it's nice and easy. It's not equal to FR. So any of the information that's coming to France. So we can see that we've got 59 items there. So if you're using this quite often, that's a much more manageable number to be able to go through and do it. And that's where if we come back across to Bright Data, that's where it's also key just to keep an eye on this limited number of articles reused or researched so that we're not putting back too much information when we're doing our analysis. We're going to come across, we're going to come into AI, we're going to come down to sentiment analysis. What we then want to look at is title, because we want to analyze the title of the story. And then perhaps if you want to as well, you can do publisher, because then what you'll be able to do is maybe analyze the publishers, see if there's some that are more positive, negative, left-leaning, right-leaning for political spectrum. And what we'll need to do is come out of here. We're going to add our model in here. So now we'll be able to go through and analyze each of these 59 stories that we've kept to see if they're positive, negative, or neutral. And then, of course, go through and see if that's impacted the stock as well. So as we can see here, it's going to go through 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But as we showed a little bit earlier, if you wanted to aggregate them together and then push them through maybe as a publisher, you could do it that way as well to get some insights that way. Or if you wanted to aggregate them by day maybe and put them through that way so you could see if it's a more positive day, week, month, you could do it that way. Again, this way that we're showing here just enables us to go one by one through all of the stories that have occurred in the last 24 hours in the US and the UK to do with Apple. So we'll just wait for this to come back and then we'll be able to go through and aggregate this information. So actually, let's start on that. We'll be able to do aggregate. So we'll come through and do that. We're going to duplicate this across to the other 3 channels so that we're able to do that nice and quickly. So there we go. We've got all 3 ready to go. We'll be able to do save. It looks like we're almost done. So now we can see that we've got 9 are positive, we've got 38 as neutral, and then we've got what looks like to be 12 as just that negative branch. So now what we can go through and do is, again, without using our executions for multiple requests, what we're going to do is just aggregate these titles together. So we're only concerned about the titles at this stage for this test. So now we've got one array there. We'll do one array there, and then we'll come through and do another array here. And then what we need to go through and do is add our basic LLM in here. And again, the reason I love using this is because we'll be able to come down here and change the chat model. So if you wanted to use something else, you'll be able to as well. Again, we're going to be using our GPT-4 Mini to keep that cost down nice and low. We'll do positive analysis, and then we'll be able to come in here. We'll be able to add our prompt. We're going to change it to expression, pop it out, and then we're going to paste our prompt in here. So that's all good to go. And we're also going to need to change this. And then what we'll do is just put a hold in here for now. We'll do test step. What should happen is we'll just connect it up so it can see. And then what we'll be able to do is put across our titles. So now it's going to go through and analyze each of these positive titles and just see why it's worked so well and what may be key. Again, we're doing this as an array just to try and keep some of that costs a bit more consistent, batching them up. But if you wanted to go through and do it in one by one for each of these stories, you're able to do that as well. We'll come through and duplicate because it's going to be exactly the same request that we'll do for the neutral, negative, and positive news. We'll be able to come down and do duplicate, and we'll connect this up here. So now we've got the 3 different options to be able to go through and analyze the stories as they come into us. What we'll now do is come across to merge. And then what we're going to do is bring this back across. We're going to change this to have 3. And then what we're going to do is append each of this information. So now we'll be able to see, okay, within the last day or so, what were the positive stories, negative stories, so that we can go through and analyze each of this. So this will just need to go off and execute again, and then we'll be able to go through and use this. So there we go. We've analyzed all of those stories. We've got still 9 coming through as that positive. We've gone through and aggregated that information in there so we can see why it's been positive. And we've now got these 3 items coming through for the positive, neutral, and negative to give us some insight into that stock. We'll now do aggregate. So we'll come through and do aggregate. We'll then pull this text across. So we're going to basically categorize and group all of them because they've got the same IDs. And now what we're going to need to do is come across and do merge, because we need to put in some information that we generated a bit earlier to make sure we're getting that best output. So we're going to pull this down to number 3. We're going to come back to the left-hand side and we're going to put across where we've got the analysis of the chart into number 1. And we're going to put across where we've got our Yahoo Finance data into 2. And this is going to give us lots of information that we'll be able to use for our stock analyst in a minute. What we do need to do is come into here. We're going to come down to combine and we're going to change this to position just so that we can come through and aggregate all 3 of these pieces so that we can use them in the future. It looks like we're just going to have to go off and refresh some of the information back here. So whilst that loads up, let's go through and we'll do our basic LLM again. So again, if we ever wanted to change what the input was, we could do as well. We're going to add our prompt in here. Again, expression, we're going to pop this out. And then we're going to paste our prompt in here. Again, you'll get access to all of this in the resources, or stop the video here and make sure to read through. We're going to come out of here. We're going to change to define below. We're going to put this to expression, and then we're going to pop this out. Then we're going to paste all of this information in here, which is going to come from our steps before. And then this will be our stock analyst, which will be able to provide the insights for us on all of these different stocks. We'll add our OpenAI module in here. So again, we're keeping that cost nice and low with the GPT-4 model to be able to analyze all of these stocks. So there we go. It looks like we've got all of our merged data back across. And if we open this up, again, this is what I love about n8n, is we can see what that AI agent is going to see on the right-hand side here. So we can see the regular price, 52-week high, low, regular high, regular low, volume, all of this information, plus some other key information, and our news stories down the bottom here with that aggregated information of what's good, what's bad, and if it's been positive news or bad news around that company. So now we can do test step, and what it will be able to do is give us this really critical insight into that company. So again, we've already got this stock ticker on the left-hand side here, the stock chart that we'll be able to use as insight. What this can do is then feed that back into that AI agent that we built, because it's got this trigger on the workflow. But for time, I'm just going to show you with Telegram that we're able to add it back into our chat. So we'll do text. We're going to do send a text message. We will be able to add our JSON text in here. I'm going to come right back down to the start, but of course, this is not how we're going to use it in the future, because what we want to be able to do is have this go back into our AI agent to provide the response. So I'm just going to get the hard-coded one for now, just to show you that if we add it in here, on the left-hand side, we'll get this response coming through with this executive insight. So before we give it a quick test, we'll just come back across. We'll make sure to unpin this data just so we can see it working all correct from the start. We'll come back here. We'll say, please write me a performance around Apple. We'll be able to say test workflow. It should come through and trigger this detailed stock analysis. We should then be able to come across to our agent. We'll need to look at these executions. So if we just refresh this, what we should see is it running. So we'll just wait for it to come back up to the top because we just saw it appear. There we go. So it's running for 18 seconds. Again, this will take a little while to go through because of the amount of data we're analyzing and scraping from Google News, as well as going through and using our AI agent to really analyze it to get that result. So I'll just wait for this to come back. So there we go. It looks like it succeeded. So if we come back across, we've got a green tick here, and we've got all of that information coming back on the left-hand side here, all around how that stock performs. And again, we've not got that image, but if we wanted to go back in here, we would be able to add it directly to share it, perhaps after this get a chart module, so that we've got access to it. That's been a really quick video just to get some really detailed insights onto how to build an AI agent that analyzes stock performance. Make sure to come across to the community. We've got all of the resources in here, plus much, much more that you'll get access from day one. Stay tuned for more around AI agents, automation, and have a great day.